What is up, everybody? Shonnydman here, and welcome back to the channel. Hope you guys had yourselves a great weekend. Have yourselves a pretty good week up to this point. We are here. If you could not tell by the thumbnail when you clicked on the video, we are doing a Bad Batch series review, and I thought it was pretty much a guarantee that I would have these two lovely ladies back on for that. For those who are watching, if you're not familiar with these two ladies, they are previous guests on different episodes of Nerd Talk, but I will let them introduce themselves once more before we get things going. So whichever one wants to go first.
Okay.
I am first.
Well, hi everyone. My name is Katarina. I talk about Star Wars. I really, really love the Bad Batch, like especially the Bad Batch. And I'm on like TikTok, Instagram. Just started posting on Twitter, which is kind of crazy, but I'm not very active on there. But yeah, I just talk about Star Wars, love Star Wars. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, and I'm Angele, otherwise known as Nerdy Girl, on TikTok and Instagram, and hopefully YouTube soon. Planning to start that in the next couple of weeks. I make Star Wars content and just general fandom content, especially a lot of Star Wars animation. I love Clone Wars, Rebels, and of course Bad Batch. So I'm really excited to be here and talk about it today.
Okay, so before we hit record, these two ladies we're very much discussing that they are going to Star Wars Celebration, which ticket sales came out last Wednesday.
I think it was Thursday.
Yeah, last Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday.
I had forgot about it, and until I start seeing people like taking screenshots or posting on their Instagrams and things of them having 3 laptops or so waiting to jump in there. So did you two have to basically fight tooth and nail in order to get your tickets? Because they sold out relatively quick from my understanding. Well, the 3-day ones, I think you can still buy individual day tickets, but like the VIP 3-day and the overall 3-day were sold out relatively quick.
Luckily, I had the experience from last year in London, and I will say this actually wasn't as bad as last year was because London was 4-day, and so the price gap between the single-day tickets and the 4-day tickets was significantly higher than buying single-day versus 3-day for Japan. I think literally it was only a $7 difference cumulatively, so if you're still looking to get tickets, you can buy single-day tickets, and it only costs you $7 more altogether. They did sell out pretty quickly, but it actually wasn't me. I was teaching at the time, so I had instructed my husband to have both our laptops open, had pulled up the page before I left to teach, and made sure he had it on his phone, and was following up with him the whole time. And I definitely was a little nervous, but I was very happy when I got the text that he sent me the screenshot. I was like, yes, we got him. So it was stressful, but it went well, and I was very grateful for that. So
I just went in with a lot of hope. I like was on the way home from visiting friends, and then I had my sister. I was like, please, like, can you set it up? She's like, yeah, sure, no problem. When I got home, we were in the queue for about, I think, an hour, and I was just like checking my phone and seeing everybody being like, I got the tickets, and I'm like, oh my God, this is awful, because I'm just waiting still. Fortunately, I was able to get tickets, but I did have to do like the single day versus the 3-day adult because those had sold out by the time I got in the queue. But the price difference like wasn't bad, so I was like not even mad about it because I was like, I'm still gonna be there all 3 days.
Okay.
yeah, and I'm really glad that they kind of made it much more accessible because, yeah, last year, the single-day tickets, if you had to buy the single-day tickets, all 4 of them, I think it ran you like almost like $80 to $100 more. So last year, I was very grateful because the 4-day tickets were a significantly better deal. I'm really glad that they changed it this year, so it was a lot more, I think, affordable and accessible for people who weren't able to get those 3-day tickets. Because, yeah, they did sell out in like an hour.
Yeah.
Hour and a half, and it was pretty insane. So I'm glad that they changed that up a little bit for this year.
And looking at it, looks like there was like a lot, because I looked at it myself just to see what everything looked like, and there's a lot of different selections you can do, like cosplaying, gaming, book and literature. So it's like this is a lot, but
Oh, yeah.
people are excited for it. So I'm happy for them to. I'm happy for you both to be able to make this trip to Japan. I'm very much look forward to hearing your stories about that. So it's pretty fun, pretty fun. So first off, before we jump into our full review of the 3 seasons of Star Wars: The Bad Batch, this past weekend, May 4th, obviously Star Wars Day, everybody knows that, we got Tales of the Empire. So I did a small review on my Instagram talking about it, but what were y'all's thoughts on the 6 episodes that we got?
I thought it was really great. I was really happy to see Barris again, just because that's been, a storyline that was left, untouched for so long. Gosh, I think probably close to maybe 7 or 8 years, maybe longer. That storyline had been unfinished, and so it's really exciting to see that, and see kind of her journey with that. And I just thought it was really great. I love how Dave is really good at telling parallel storylines, and so the 3 episodes with Morgan Elsbeth versus 3 episodes with Barris, and kind of those opposing character arcs, I thought was really interesting to watch, and so I really enjoyed it. It was great.
Yeah, you like worded it better than I ever could, but I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I think that it has like a much more mature tone than like some of the other animated series would have, especially because it's so condensed. But I love that it was also like 2 leading female characters, which I'm kind of like, yes, like finally, like you're getting to hear perspectives from characters that we kind of have questions about or haven't gotten to hear much, and seeing like where they're both paths, like where both of their paths went, ultimately after having experienced like similar things of grief or just um, kind of like emotional feelings from things that are happening on the outside because of like the Empire and the Jedi and stuff like that, and seeing how they both go down different paths, I thought was really, really nice. And also, like, the animation was incredible. Like, it was so stunning. And then to find out later on that they did a couple practical effects, like, especially with like the mountains and stuff, like, those were practical effects as opposed to just animation. So to see how they kind of go back to like classic Star Wars techniques was really, I thought that was really cool.
I didn't know that. That's really cool. And yeah, like you said, the animation was stunning. I had no idea about that, though. That is, I mean, the animation in Star Wars over the last, couple of years, as I'm sure we'll probably touch on with Bad Batch 2, has just increasingly gone up. So that's really cool. That's awesome, man.
It
Yeah, it
was
was
cool.
fantastic.
I like when I found it out, I was like, no way. Like, are you kidding me? It was just so like some of the shots looked so realistic too. Like, I know there's a side profile of Vader where I was like, that you could have told me that was from Kenobi and I would have believed you. Like, it was so incredible.
Oh my gosh, that is so. I do. I remember thinking of some of the scenes in Tales of the Jedi too, where I was like, "Oh my gosh, this animation! It looks so real. Like the texture to
Hmm.
everything." I remember especially in the episode with Ahsoka, like baby Ahsoka, just the
Yes.
texture was so rich and vibrant, and the colors of the village and the different characters. Also, this is just it's a feast for your eyes. It is gorgeous. Oh my gosh, it just immerses you. And so
Hmm.
yeah, they did just as well, if not better, for Tales of the Empire. So I'm glad you shared that. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was very. I was able to watch it. It was the time the releasing of it was very weird for them to drop it. I think it came out in the UK first.
Hmm.
Um, and so I basically stayed up and used a VPN in order to watch it a little early. But I enjoyed it. And when I wrote my little small series review of it with Morgan Elsbeth, well, I guess what Barry says also, but with Morgan Elsbeth, it just ties in a lot of stuff that we see in season 2 of Mandalorian with her character, and then with the Ahsoka series and her relationship to Thrawn. The ending of that particular arc in Tales of the Empire was not interesting. I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for is, but I was kind of expecting it to tie in a little bit more, like showing how Ahsoka shows up on Corvus, because when that New Republic ambassador, ultimately gets killed, I believe the voice on the little communicator was Bo Katan's voice. So I thought that was very interesting for that character to be the one to pick up. But I mean, it was a distress signal, so she obviously could have been in the area at the time. But I love the shade of blue that they did with Thrawn. It looks a lot. Honestly, it looks a lot better than what's in Rebels, and then obviously it's hard to kind of translate that to live action with Ahsoka. But I just love the shade of blue that they went along with. Barris, what I was very much surprised and actually really pleased with the redemption arc that she got in this series, especially seeing what happens during the Clone Wars and that little story arc between her and Ahsoka, Anakin, and the Jedi temple bombing and all that. But it was very, very nice to see how her story, comes back full circle. That even though during the Clone Wars, she came disenfranchised with the Jedi and everything, but ultimately in the end, she kept those core Jedi traditions that she was taught by Luminara. I guessed that this particular arc takes place after Kenobi, because that one Inquisitor is in Kenobi. So I thought that was another good way of tying that in with that particular series as well. But it leaves it on a cliffhanger, because I'm very curious on what happens going forward with that particular character. But overall, I really enjoyed the Tales of the Empire and also Tales of the Jedi. Both have done a really good job of showcasing and giving more lore aspects to these characters. And honestly, I still very much love the Count Dooku aspect of that came from Tales of the Jedi, because it just, you see why he became again disenfranchised with the Jedi, which is something interesting throughout most of Star Wars. With some of these newer projects that we get, is that you kind of see the point of where the Jedi go wrong in a lot of aspects, and we'll probably see this again in The Acolyte, which comes out in a couple of weeks as well. But it was good. Overall I enjoyed It Tells of the Empire. I couldn't rank them. See, these four particular arcs with Tales of the Jedi and Tales of the Empire are just so unique, and the animation is just so good. The storytelling is just outstanding. It is definitely one of Disney's better Star Wars projects. And again, it was very much came out of nowhere. I think a lot of people thought we were going to get a Tales of the Jedi season 2, and then they dropped Tales of the Empire. So what do you think? What do you think's next? What kind of Tales of something do you think comes next after we just got this one?
I'm not sure. I know a lot of people have been saying they want Tales of the Clones, which, like, I always want more clones content. But I do feel like there is still more room to kind of go into other seasons of Tales of the Jedi. And I know they did say they were getting a season 2, so I'm kind of wondering, like, was the season 2 intended to be like Tales of the Empire, or are we still getting a season 2? Because I know a lot of people were wondering if we could get like a season, or like episodes on Balin, because we don't know much about him, or just maybe Plo Koon. And I do think it's interesting how so far the theme has been to kind of have parallel stories. So I wonder what two characters they would be able to pair up. Or people were wondering, like, if we could have like Tales of Crimson Dawn, or Tales of the Underworld, or Tales of Bounty Hunters. Like, just there's so many different aspects and like routes you can go to. Tales of like Rebels, or anything like that. Like Tales of the Rebellion. I don't know. There's just so many different ways you can go, and I want more. Like, I'm kind of insatiable with these stories, especially because they add such depth to like past and existing and future storylines that I just am so invested in it. And to get like little drops like these, I'm kind of like, I want, like, please keep making them.
Yeah, I would really like to see a Tales of the Rebellion. I think that would be really cool. And I know we see so much of the Rebellion, but I think early Rebellion is one of the most untouched eras for Star Wars, because really the only thing that we have for early rebellion is Kenobi, and we didn't really get to see much of the way, which was, you know, the very early starts of the rebellion. So I would really like to see that era touched on. And then, like you said, I do also wonder about this Tales of the Jedi season 2, because I do think there's so many stories that could be told. And I will say one that I think would do really well to get an arc like this is Obi-Wan and Satine. And James Arnold Taylor has recently touched on this a couple of times about how he would really, really like to see some of the interaction between Obi-Wan and Satine. And so I think that that would fit really well into a Tales of the Jedi, with them, and then maybe, you know, some other, you know, parallel, you know, relationship between two other characters. You know, Anakin and Padme we get to see a lot of, so I almost wonder if maybe there's some other, you know, Jedi that could kind of serve as a parallel to that. But I think Obi-Wan and Satine is definitely something we need to see, in some way, shape, and or form. And I know there's a lot of people who want it, and James Arnold Taylor has been like, make it known. So Star Wars, this is what we want. We all want this. Please. I would love that. That would probably be my biggest ask.
Yeah, you can definitely do a Tales of Mandalore kind of aspect to it. Going more explaining not just the Mandalorian culture, which we do see a good bit in the Mandalorian, but explore more of the fallout between Satine and Bo-Katan, and how she joins Death Watch. That would be a very interesting one. Tales of the Bounty Hunters, I would love that, because we still haven't got, because before they brought back season 7 of the Clone Wars series, they were a lot of, you know, unfinished projects, and one of them was a young Boba Fett and taking on Cad Bane, which is how he gets the dent in his helmet. So I think that could be another good aspect of you tying in with those two characters. But yeah, that's Tales of the Rebellion would be very interesting, because like you said, that is an aspect that we necessarily haven't really. Andor does a little bit of it, but it seems by the point of Andor, the rebellion has already started, but although it is very small. And I think there's a deleted scene in Revenge of the Sith that has Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, and at least some of the characters who would eventually be leaders in the rebellions. So that could be an interesting aspect that should be explored as well. I don't think there's much other than that. But yeah, there's a lot of stories that I think you could probably tell with the style of Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire that they've been doing with these two particular shows. So
yeah. The nice thing about Star Wars is it's such a massive, expansive universe at this point that there's so many opportunities for storytelling in so many different eras with so many different kinds of characters. And there's just always constantly untapped potential and more stories to be told. So I look forward to hopefully more of that in the future.
all right, so let us jump into the Bad Batch. So what we're gonna do, I think, since season 3 is the freshest, we're gonna just talk about season 3, but we'll also, you know, wrap around to seasons 1 and 2 overall, with the overall arching story of the Bad Batch series. But I know both have gave your reviews on your TikToks, but for those who are watching on YouTube, what were your overall thoughts of season 3 of the Bad Batch?
Do you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. Yeah, so I think season 3, for me, I'm tied between season 2 and season 3 in terms of my favorite season. But I definitely think season 3 did, you know, a really good job of wrapping up the Bad Batch's story, and bringing a very, very satisfying ending, that I was really pleasantly surprised by, because I had been very prepared from the beginning of season 3 to say goodbye to another member of the Batch, and had emotionally prepared myself to potentially see, Hunter or Crosshair not make it out of season 3. And so I was very, very pleasantly surprised to actually see a happy ending happen in Star Wars animation, which is pretty much the first time we've had that. Well, Rebels had a bit more of a satisfying happy year ending. Kanan had died like 5 episodes before that, so I wouldn't classify it as a happy ending. But I think Bad Batch really genuinely was that was such a beautiful way to wrap it up, to allow them to choose to have peace. And it reminds me of the scene all the way back at the end of Clone Wars season 7 between Rex and Ahsoka, where they're talking about like what the clones' lives would look like after the war, and Rex is kind of pondering this question. And so I feel like it's nice to actually get to see the Bad Batch choose to, to have a peaceful life, and to not, continue fighting. They've been through enough. But then also you do get to choose, see clones like Rex and Echo choose to continue the fight. And that's a perfectly valid choice as well. But I think it was really beautiful to see them have the opportunity to choose the life that they wanted for themselves, especially considering that that's been a theme for the clones for the entirety of Clone Wars, is the clones having, individuality and personality. And all the way back then going to Cut at the very beginning of Clone Wars, and seeing him make the choice that was very frowned upon by the rest of the clones, to choose to leave the Republic because he wanted to have a life and a family. And so it feels so full circle to finally come around to that, and to actually get to see that lived out. And to see these people who, yes, were soldiers and were clones and they were bred for this, but they're truly individuals who have now this life that they have every right to live. And so it was just really nice to see that, I think, for me. And that was probably the highlight of, I would say, this season, but honestly, the whole show for me.
I completely agree. I loved it. I thought that because, just having the anticipation of like seasons 1 and 2 and then leading up to 3, I thought that it was very well done in terms of like storytelling and technique. I thought the pacing was amazing. And to know that they were like faithful to these characters until the very end, I'm so glad to have such an amazing team of like writers and animators and just completely like everybody behind the Bad Batch be so dedicated in telling the story in a way that still, addresses the darker themes, but also stays truthful to like hope and family and love, and also just change, which has been a constant theme throughout the beginning. And you get to see how they adapt, but also how they come closer together through that. And I think just they had so many amazing developments, whether in Crosshair or seeing Omega grow and just kind of understanding and forgiveness, seeing that all play out in the end was amazing. And I am a little bit different than you, Angel, because I was like a happy ending Bad Batch truther since like last season, just because I'm like crazy. Like I had to tell myself that, otherwise I would have like otherwise I like would have not been a sane person. But I also just felt like there's no way that they have had this much hope and this, these themes of family be so tight knit. Not to say that it like wasn't existing in other projects, but I think it just felt a little different with the Bad Batch. And it was a completely bittersweet ending for me. So sweet, and knowing that they were able to pursue a future that they chose, that they weren't forced into, but to also know that the Bad Batch did choose to like be a family. And Hunter, like thinking about the fact that he could have been anything and he chose to be a father to Omega, it just like warms my heart to know that that was what they wanted since the beginning, and to know that they got that piece was just really incredible. And also thinking about the show and the timeline as it is like in the height of the Empire, and to know that there's still like 20 some years of like the Empire going to be in power, to have the peace of mind from the writers through the epilogue, to know that they were still safe on Pabu and united as a family unit, it just gave me so much joy. And knowing that they were going to be okay, but also like technically if they choose to revisit them through those couple years, they have plot armor. So now I'm like, yes, like thank God. And it also did I'm like, plot armor, yes, for clones, like that's rare.
Right.
I yeah. And then also, like, there's still questions that we have that can be answered in other projects. Like, what happened to Echo? Like, why isn't he with Rex? Where's Hauser? Where's Emery gone? How does everything play out with Ryo Chuchi? Are we going to get another spinoff with Omega? So just to know that they have all these other opportunities to kind of maybe revisit the batch or just explore these characters in more depth, it left me with such a feeling of hope and like wanting more. But also, like, I'm super satisfied with the way they decided to close the chapter of the Bad Batch. Like, as bittersweet as it was, I'm still thankful for everything that we got with all of the, everything leading up to Tantus for a couple of seasons and seeing that play out, and then just like everything that happened on Pabu, and now that they have like that sense of peace, I'm oh gosh, I loved it so much.
That's great.
They leading into season 3, there was just a lot of conversations with regard, like there were people who, on Twitter, or I don't think I saw any on TikTok, but I know Twitter I saw there were like, how credible these people were, I don't know, but there are people who were, I saw like the first 5 episodes of the Bad Batch, and you guys are gonna like it. It's very dark and things like that. And throughout season 3, there were some dark moments, but it didn't. I don't know. It didn't feel like dark. It didn't feel like how it was when Tech dies at the end of season 2, which I give credit to the writers for not bringing him back. And so, I mean, that was definitely one of the theories that of the Shadow clones was Tech was going to be one of them. And I give credit to Dave Filoni and that group of not even doing that, not even going that route. So it is pretty much sad, because I thought about it after the season finale, that like Tech is the only Bad Batcher who doesn't get to see Omega grow up. And so it's very, but she does keep his goggles as a remembrance of him. I thought the last episode, it was dark from the aspect of just the amount of like how people were dying in this show. Even Clone Wars wasn't this dark. And you're seeing people getting impaled, getting stepped on, eaten by a Zillo beast. Crosshair loses his hand, and so it was just very dark in that aspect. But overall, it was a pretty good season 3. Ending definitely leaves a lot open. Omega goes and joins the Rebellion as a pilot. You got Crosshairs, Wrecker, and Hunter just chilling on Pabu. It did feel like they left it open-ended, not just for Omega, but also for the Bad Batch to potentially make some kind of appearance in some future Star Wars project, whether it's more than likely Rebellion based. But listen, I love the look of Hunter in the season finale. I love that look, the beard, the hair. He looked good for a man of his age.
Yeah, I agree that there's definitely a potential to see them again, because the fight for the rebellion, as Hunter said, or as Omega said, it's they fought enough, and so I love how she said, "This is my fight," but then of course Hunter was like, "If you ever need us, we will be there." And so I do feel that left the space for if we get to see Omega in the future, which I definitely think is a possibility, that we may get probably a brief appearance from them if they ever need to come in clutch for their girl, because I know they will. And so I look forward to hopefully getting to see a very small glimpse of them. I think that for the most part they're going to rest, and they're gonna live out their lives, but I do think that if Omega ever needs them, then they'll be there. And just to address Tech really quickly, I definitely was a Tech Lives truther. I was convinced he was CX, and there's part of me that is kind of like, I feel like a lot of attention was put on his character. and it was another Merrick situation, which is okay. But I am really glad that they honored Tech at the end, and showing the goggles. And the only reason that they get to choose to have this life now is because of the sacrifice that Tech made for them. And I feel like them getting to choose that life is a really nice way of honoring him, because his sacrifice wasn't in vain. His sacrifice is the only reason that they get to have the life that they have, and I think they honor him in that. So just to touch on that a little bit, because I definitely am sad that Tech really is gone, but I'm glad they honored his sacrifice.
I was a Tech Lives truther since the moment he fell, and it was like I had myself convinced, but there were so many red herrings to the point where I was just like, it would make sense for him to be CX too, because like who
Right?
else says domicile? Like nobody else in the world of Star Wars would be saying that.
You. Oh my gosh.
It just was like there was so much stuff lining up for it. So now having reached the finale where they gave us like years and years of closure of knowing that Tech's really gone. Um, I feel like it hurt, but at the same time, it was nice to kind of get that sense of like, okay, like it's done. Let him rest in peace and honor his sacrifice. And I think just the way that they kind of recognized his character, I felt like was very on brand for the way soldiers would be forced to do that. They didn't really have time to mourn him. They didn't have time to grieve, and especially Omega being on her own and being isolated. I can only imagine like how she would have to process that. And I think the way that they were able to honor him was through their actions, and I think the way that they go about situations, or just how Tech lives in all of them, and especially Omega, seeing her be a rebellion pilot and kind of have his goggles with her as like a piece of him, but then also just to know everything he taught her in the short amount of time that they were together is just a way for her to go on and like live his legacy. And I can't imagine anything else he would have wanted besides that. Um, Thinking about sort of like the dark themes that you said, I remember when all the reviews came out and just everybody saying like this is the darkest we've seen Star Wars in like a long time, or all this stuff. It had me kind of like super super worried, because I'm like, how much worse can it get? Because we've seen some pretty dark stuff, and to know that it was really dark, but at the same time I didn't really get to that sense of like dread, because I think it's still so impressive that the writers were able to weave in all of that light even between the dark. I think says a lot about like the brightness of hope, and also the Bad Batch, and just being able to overcome adversity even when it seems like it's kind of coming in on you. I think was really impressive to know that even like as dark as it got, they were still able to kind of give the viewers a sense of just like it's gonna be okay, just keep pushing through, and it'll make sense in the end. I thought was really really nice.
Yeah. I want to touch on what you said about Tech, and the Bad Batch and how they mourned him, because I've heard a lot of people, and I'll admit I do wish we'd maybe gotten a little bit more of getting to see some of the process of grieving Tech, but I really
Yeah.
liked what you said about the fact that they are soldiers, and as somebody who is who married into a military family with a very deep military history, and actually somebody who my husband is named after his grandfather who died in Vietnam, and so understanding that, and the culture, the military culture, which was something that growing up I wasn't familiar with, and then marrying into it, I very much was very quickly exposed to military culture, and grief in a setting like that is very different. And so that really gave me an understanding for that. And then I really appreciated that they honored that, because when you lose somebody in combat like that, the grieving process is very, very different, and oftentimes a lot less outwardly emotional than most grief is for the average person, just because there's such a different mindset going in. And so I was actually really glad, after reflecting on it, that I feel like they honored that. And again, having military family, my husband, really was able to appreciate that as somebody with military experience, and say they really honored that. And I feel like Bad Batch, in a really nice way, is a really nice kind of nod to those who serve too, because it really does a good job of helping to bring out some of the complexities of what it's like to live that life. And I think the Bad Batch are a really beautiful representation of that. And again, that they did a really good job of showing what losing somebody in combat is like, and that does leave kind of a gap, because they mentioned so many times about, if tech was here, we'd have the ability to do this. And functionality wise, when you lose somebody in combat, there's a gaping hole that's left because part of your team is missing. And that can honestly be, from what I understand, one of the most painful things when dealing with losing somebody like that. And so I felt that they did a really, really nice job of portraying that. I definitely wish we'd gotten to see a little bit more of it. But with the time constraints in the story they had to tell, there's only so much you can go into. But I just wanted to touch on that, because from that, personal experience, I really appreciated that and thought that was really nicely done.
Rex kind of does this. He kind of does the same thing in season 7 of the Clone Wars, which is the same episode the Bad Batch comes in, where he is kind of looking at a photo. I believe it was like him, Cody, Echo 5s, and he's just remembering basically the clones who have died throughout the war. Heavy, Echo, well, not Echo, well, Echo at this time, 5s with what happened in season 5, and there's just so other many clones. You could tell it weighs on him. And then even at the end of season 7 with Rex and Ahsoka having to just bury all the clones after the Venator goes down. Definitely would love to see a little bit more of a grief process, but I'm very much fine with how they did it with the Bad Batch, for sure. And I wasn't, I don't know, I wasn't much of a tech lives person. I wouldn't have been surprised if that happened, but when it came to the shadow clones part of it, there were like so many different theories about it, like tech, Cody, because we don't see Cody after the one episode that he's in, which is it is for me. I was just kind of like, that's a little bit of a letdown right there, because you don't know what happens to Cody. Does Rex find him, or like it's, and then who else was it? I had a when me and Katarina had our episode, I was like, you know what, this could be a Crosshairs clone, but turns out it wasn't. So I mean, I'm fine with the route they did with this, but they probably may have put too much emphasis on these particular operatives, where they could have just maybe easily explained it. I mean, I think people knew there were clones who were kind of brainwashed to some extent, but they definitely made it people feel like it was either Tech, it was either Cody, or just something along those lines. And each one was pretty. I liked them overall. They were very cool. But that's probably something that could have just been, I don't know. It could have just been something easily squashed with some of like the tech rumors and the Cody thing, and be like, that's not that. It's just regular clones. But it would make sense for the Empire to do a thing like that, where the clones go AWOL, but in reality, they're just in this brainwashing program. So question: do you think at some point, do you think we'll see a animated series that involves Omega first, or do you think we will see a live action version of Omega? I mean, because Dave Filoni he's done this at this point, of taking characters that we see in Clone Wars, Rebels, and eventually bringing them to live action. So do you think that will kind of happen with Omega? Not necessarily the Bad Batch, because I think you would either probably have to get what's his name?
Gamora?
Yeah.
Morrison.
Yeah, you will probably have to get him like you did with Ahsoka. But just strictly Omega wise, what do you think will happen with her character? Do we see her in another animated show, or do you think we'll see her at some point in a live action show?
I'm hoping and begging that we only see Omega in live action. I know that might be controversial. I know a lot of people were kind of eager to see her maybe in, oh, I mean animated. Sorry. I want her, I don't even know what I said, guys. Bad Batch is like brain rot is so real, but I only want to see Omega animated, not live action. I think because of like the individuality and uniqueness behind her character and where she comes from. And I think also having her in live action would probably eliminate the opportunities to have the Bad Batch because I can't see a way in which they would bring about the Bad Batch in live action, but I also think there's such beauty and art in animation, and that I really hope Star Wars keeps pursuing it because I think there's so many other opportunities to like tell other stories that you wouldn't be able to tell in such a grand sense had it been live action. And I think Omega, just like having Michelle be the voice of her, feels so iconic that I can't imagine having somebody else kind of try to fulfill that role. And I just think having Jennifer Corbett kind of seems to be like a really lead person behind animation. I think Dave Filoni's definitely stepped into live action. I really want to see more from her and like Brad Rao, and also just kind of like because I feel like they understand these characters so well, and also like Jennifer Corbett kind of has military insight and background. So to know that she kind of comes from being in the military herself, having that experience, being able to kind of put that in the animation world and have that perspective, I think it really relays on screen. Like what you were saying, Angela, about like having all of that like military influence and stuff. Yeah,
Wow,
she
that
was
makes
in the
so much
military,
sense. Oh
so
my
she's
gosh. No
yeah,
wonder.
like she literally, yeah, she served and then she served. Like she is so amazing. So to
She
know
did
that she
serve.
is just, yeah. So I mean, like amazing to have like that influence behind screen and feel it through these characters. I can really see her kind of having a step up, like her and Brad Rao in the animation world. Because I know people have been saying like, is Dave Filoni going to become like the next George Lucas, and then like Jennifer is going to be like the next Dave Filoni, but have their own individuality and like bring a new sense and new breath into these shows. I definitely would love to see Omega in only animation, which I don't know if that's like a hot topic. I know people were like, please bring her in live action, but I'm like, please don't. I'm like, please just keep her in animation. Like, please, I'm begging you.
No, I echo that 100%. I appreciate live action, and I'm grateful for the continuation of, the Rebel story that we've gotten in live action. But I have a really, a heart for animation, and I do really think that there is a uniqueness in what we're able to do with animation. And so, to completely echo you, I don't know if it's a hot take, but I absolutely agree. I would only want to see Omega in animation, and I would only want it to be done with Michelle as the voice,
Thank
obviously,
you.
and who is incredible, and I love her so much. And then, as you said, Jennifer and Brad, who are just absolute geniuses. And I think you're absolutely right. Dave Filoni is becoming the next Lucas, and I think Jennifer is becoming the next Dave Filoni. And she really fully lives up to his ability to write incredible character arcs,
Yes.
because
Oh
I
my gosh,
mean, my
yes.
gosh, Crosshair, like that's like Zuko level redemption arc, right
Real.
for you. And so she really is, her and Brad and the whole Bad Batch team, but them two specifically, they're a power duo. And I didn't know that about her, and so it's really clear that she clearly has that experience. And so I think her writing the Bad Batch, clearly, yeah, she brought a lot of her own personal experience into that. I love her. They're incredible. And so I would love to see, even outside of Omega, I really would love to see Jennifer Corbett and Brad go on to do much
Mhm.
more for Star Wars animation, because I think we're going to get some more animated projects announced, hopefully in the near future. I'm hopeful for, Ventress's voice actress teased about,
Yes.
doing some stuff with Ventress and getting answers for those who've read Dark Disciple. Because we're
Is
all
she
still
alive?
she's alive somehow. Especially if you read the book and you know the details of how she died, like I am scratching my head as to how on earth she survived. But I have faith that they will create a really good explanation for that, and I really, really look forward to that. And I hope that maybe it sounds like Jennifer, because she had touched on it too, so it sounds like she's
Mhm.
probably at least part of that, if not, going to be heading that project up. And so I'm very excited for that, and would love to see her continue to create some more phenomenal Star Wars animation. So if it's a hot take, then we're together on that.
Yes, thank
Animation
you.
all the way. Animation all the way.
So so with season 3, which episode was your favorite, and which episode was your least favorite?
I love them all.
I know,
I did not.
but
I
you,
don't. I can't. I don't think
we
I
had
have
this
a least
discussion
favorite.
in our
I
episode,
know.
but you got to pick one.
Okay, I'll give different answers. I'll give
Okay.
because I know last time I said I really loved episode 3. I loved there's the thing is that there's different things about each episode. Like I can easily say the finale, but then I also love
Mhm.
episode 5 because that was like the first time you got to see the batch be reunited after everything that happened. So to see those different dynamics play out, but how they still managed to come together, and that talk between Crosshair and Hunter I think was really impactful, and I still think you get to see them kind of progress as the season goes on. It was really, really lovely. So episode 5 was definitely a standout for me. I felt like I revisited it a lot. But like the finale I think was so amazing at like wrapping everything up, and I think it had so many different great aspects. And even the episode with Emery, which I know some people probably don't rank it as high from what I've heard, but just having that insight on her experience and kind of getting to see her reach that turning point in her own journey, and then finding out like what was in the vault, like that was crazy. And I truly love each episode so much for their own, respectful like things that went on in them and what they brought to the story and how it kind of relates back to past arcs or everything else. And yeah, I have no least favorite. They're just so I can't. I'm the worst person to ask. I'm sorry.
That doesn't surprise me for you. And I mean, honestly, I'll admit, I don't think I have a least favorite either. I think it was like 11 to 13 where things kind of slowed a little bit for me, and I felt maybe the stakes weren't as high, and I also can't stand Rampart. So when they rescued him, I was like, you have got to be kidding me. I don't want to look at his freaking face. So I was very happy with how things ended in the finale for him because he
So
had
good.
come in. He destroyed Camino. Him and I had beef. And so my least favorite episodes would be the one where his face was in it because I was unhappy that we
Solid answer.
had to rescue him. I was like, nobody else. It couldn't have been anybody else. And so those ones were a little slower for me. So I'll kind of say 11 through 13 was maybe where I was wanting the stakes to be a little bit higher. And I felt that the pacing slowed down a little bit. But then it picked up again, 14 and then going into the finale, which was really nice. But in terms of my favorite episodes, I have two. Finale, obviously. And then the Harbinger for me, because I love Ventress, and I thought that that whole interaction with her and Omega was really cool. And again, for those of you who've read Dark Disciple, Jennifer did such a phenomenal job keeping her character arc, because I was a little bit worried when, after having read the book, that they weren't going to stay true to her character arc and how drastically her character had changed, and bring it back a little bit more to where she was towards the end of Clone Wars for those who had seen Clone Wars and haven't read the book. But I was really, really happy because I feel like they married those two really well, and they showed that she's definitely not this soft, happy person. She's still herself, but she changed a lot. And I really loved getting to see her use the light side of the Force, which is so cool. And I got really emotional at that, because her character arc in Dark Disciple is so beautiful. I don't want to spoil too much about the book, but if you haven't read it, you absolutely should because it's phenomenal. And so that made me really emotional, and I just loved getting to hear her talk about the Force, and yet she's still her own self because she absolutely wiped the floor with Wrecker, Hunter, and Crosshair, and that was also
Yeah.
fantastic to see because I was like, yeah, they are very capable. They are, incredible soldiers. Pretty much anybody else, and they got it. And then Ventress comes along and just completely wiped the floor with them, and I was like, yeah. No, she's a force to be reckoned with, that's for sure. And again, significantly more so after the book, and after tapping into the light side and learning how to use, having her whole transformation. So I was like, this is awesome. So the Harbinger was really, really great for me, and I'm very excited to see her in the future.
Yeah, I was when when yeah, because I remember the first time seeing Ventress all the way back in the early 2000s when they did the first Clone Wars series. Was the first time
Mhm.
I came across her, and then obviously with the 2008 Clone Wars movie and onward, uh, I was just kind of like, guys, what are we doing here? Like when I watched them trying to fight Ventress, it's like, come on, guys, you what's your plan with this here? So you served along Jedi throughout an entire war. You know you have records of what Ventress can do. So, but I mean, I give them credit for them trying to make sure that she doesn't, hurt Omega. So I definitely give them credit for that. Um, I thought that was a very interesting episode because obviously when we got Ventress in like the teaser trailers and stuff like that for season 3, I was very curious on what her role in this would be, and then as season 3 goes on, we learn she has a high metachlorian count, and then became people wondering whether or not she was force sensitive. Um, I guess we can say I don't know about you two, but I guess we could say that's probably not the case. I mean, if we're going by George Lucas's rules, yes, everybody has the force in them, but I remember vividly one of the things I saw when it came to the season finale was people thought Omega would channel the force into the Zillo Beast and have a connection, but that didn't happen. So are you how do you feel about that whole little mini story arc between Ventress and Omega, and do you think she's actually force sensitive? But it's what are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to let
Okay.
Katarina take this one and disappear really quick to grab a phone charger because my phone is about to die.
No,
So
you're
I will
fine.
be back.
Yeah, I have thoughts on this one. Okay, so I remember I read like an interview after the finale came out, and it was like Brad and Jennifer talking about the episodes and just asking a bunch of stuff. And I know the question of like, is Omega force sensitive? That kind of came up. And Jennifer Corbett essentially said, like, I don't really know, but like it was a bit of an ambiguous answer, but what she essentially said was like that's not ultimately the path that Omega chose to go down. So I think Omega does have the ability to kind of channel the force if she really wanted to, if she had that training. But I love that they didn't go down that path and that she is at her heart like a clone. And I think you get to see that play out throughout the entire series. But I think it's really special to have somebody who would be able to choose to like be a Jedi and do all this stuff, which is such a traditional, like kind of intriguing part of Star Wars, but then choose that, her own path is to be special and individual because of herself and because of her background and her brothers. And so I think it's really inspiring to see somebody who is amazing and unique and special and not have those abilities in a sense. I thought that was really lovely to see that kind of come around. So, you know, being able to once again have that choice of like, are you going to choose that and not? And like choosing, having Omega follow down the path that she chose and she wanted, which was not of the Force, I thought was really great. I love that.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I definitely kind of like that they left it ambiguous. I think she has, like, you said, I think she has the potential for it, but that's not the path that she chose. And I just kind of think it's really interesting because I think it even, adds a little more to the conversation about, around what does it mean to be, force sensitive, and this idea of, everyone having access to the force and the force, and midichlorians being a part of force sensitivity, but not all there is to it. And just her choosing kind of in the same way that Grogu did, to not choose that path and to choose family. Because that was one of the biggest issues with the Jedi Order is that they would take these children from their families so young. And so you have all of these people who have never experienced, this idea of family and the idea of attachments was something that was so forbidden by the Jedi. And so I think it's a really nice contrast to see, Grogu and to see Omega not choose to go down those paths and choose family. And, that you can still engage with that. And that force sensitivity or, ability to connect with and use the force can still be there, even in little ways. Like even the fact that Omega is going on to be a pilot. We know that some of the reflexes, that
Yes,
make up
I was
a
thinking
pilot
this.
are people who are force sensitive, who have, who have a deeper connection to the force. Honestly, I will throw it out there that I think Hera, might be force sensitive because she has such incredible reflexes. But, I think that the force almost calls to some people in different ways. And so, there are those who feel called to, come down that path, and there are those who don't. And so, I really like what you said. But I definitely think that, that shows up in different ways for her. Like her connection to animals, her connection to Batcher,
100%.
is a way that I think the living force, connects everything. And so I think almost Ventress, I feel like there was a moment for me in the episode with Ventress where Ventress kind of like noticed her interacting with
Yes.
her. Yes. Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only person who noticed that. And I was like,
No, for real. Like, yeah.
And she's
And I
like,
think,
she's got this connection. And I think that gives
yes.
a little bit,
Yeah, and totally. And then Ventress at the end of the episode, like she was just like, "No, you're not force sensitive. Oh my god, like you can pack it on and go do whatever you need to do." And Crosshair and Hunter were like, "You're lying to her," and she's just like, "Doesn't matter anyways, because like the Empire's coming for her regardless." And so I think having that kind of ambiguity, but then also seeing the Force live on Omega in a ton of different ways is totally present. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
And I think that was, a way of Ventress wanting to protect her too, because Ventress, of all people, has a very checkered past with both the Sith and the Jedi, and never, has a very complicated relationship when it comes to family and relationships. And so I think she saw, this girl who had, these people who cared so much about her and this family. And I think that she made the choice to protect Omega from that, because she realized, and she said, if Omega wanted to, go down this path, she'd have to leave you guys. And I think that she maybe realized that that's not what was best for Omega, and that's probably not what she would have wanted. Omega would have never been able to be convinced to leave them anyways. And so, Omega was able to choose to leave the batch, and to leave Hunter and Wrecker and Crosshair, when the time was right for her. And that wasn't, following the path of becoming a Jedi, but I think that regardless, it really, like you said, it doesn't matter. And Ventress realized that it didn't matter for Omega, because that wasn't going to be part of her life. That wasn't something she was called to, whether or not she is. So I think that what matters a lot more is that Omega knew where she belonged.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you worded that so well.
You did too.
Yeah, so definitely with the aspect of Jedi taking, kids away from their families to become Jedi and things like that. Even in Kenobi, Obi-Wan mentions that he might have had a brother that he barely remembers. So that is something, you're taken away from your family to be a part of a life that, like the clones, honestly, you didn't really choose. You were kind of basically put into that situation. And then second, when it comes to, because like the best example I can always think of people being open to the Force is Chirrut from Rogue One. He's clearly not a Jedi, but he is so in tune with the Force. He's able to do stuff that a blind person should not be able to do. And it's the Force. Yeah, I really like. Yeah, I know that was a big kind of like when Ahsoka came out. That was just a big talking point where either you were on George Lucas's side with everybody being able to access the Force, or you have the Midichlorian situation with the prequels and just things like that. But I feel like in this situation, because even Ventress mentions that it's possible Omega could be force sensitive, because there are just millions and millions of clones created. So there is an opportunity that out of the millions of clones created, one could potentially be force sensitive. So I love that. I love that whole aspect, and I love how ultimately she was going to do what's best and protect Omega as well. And she realized the best way to do that is to keep Omega with the Bad Batch. Because the Empire, like you said, the Empire is going to come regardless. And her best chance is with Crosshairs, Wrecker, and Hunter. So it was a good episode seeing her again. I haven't read Dark Disciple, but I know a little bit about it. Um, but I have not necessarily, because I think, what do I know? Doesn't she fall in love with a certain person? I think she does. That's what I
Yeah,
thought. Yeah. And
yeah,
so,
Phil Boss.
yeah, yeah. And so,
And Dark Disciple was an unaired Clone Wars arc that
yes, right.
would have been season 7. There's actually a couple of frames and a few scenes that ended up in the book that were partially animated that you can like find on YouTube, and so it's kind of
Wow.
cool to watch those couple of things, especially after having read the book. I went back and watched those, and there are pieces of Dark Disciple that I would love to see animated if they ever decided to even go back and animate a couple of scenes from the book. But yeah, it originally would have been a Clone Wars episode, and then when it got canceled, they were like, "Well, this is a really phenomenal story, so we'll make it a book," and that's what they did. And it's a phenomenal, phenomenal read. I bawled my eyes out at the end, but it was really, really, really good.
Yeah, it's definitely something too, because honestly, if you really think about it, if we did not get the final season of the Clone Wars, might not have gotten the Bad Batch.
Definitely not.
And so, because I remember seeing after the show was originally canceled, they like the Dark Disciple episodes that you mentioned. There was that one. There was the one with Boba Fett. There was the one that we got in season 7 of the introduction of the Bad Batch. I can't think if there was another one. I know it was those three in particular.
There was a Zero Beast arc that
Yeah,
we ended up getting in season 2 with the Bad Batch. That was basically a refurbished version of what would have been in season 7, and I love the Solo Beast. So I was very
Same.
happy that we got to see him in season 2 and then in season 3. And I just got to say, I'm so happy for him because now he's just roaming around Pabu, and it's his, or not Pabu, Tantus, and it's just his little home. And I'm like, yay for you, Zilla Beast. I love creatures, especially like big, like dragony type creatures. So I love Zilbeast, and that was very exciting for me to see because I had known about that unaired arc, and I felt robbed, and so getting that in Bad Batch I was very happy.
Um, so what? So let's take it all the way back to the beginning. What season 7 of the Clone Wars? When this was like I can't remember the time lengths between the end or when it was originally canceled and then us getting season 7. I want to say maybe a little over 5 years, maybe
I think
less.
it was like 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, it was quite a
I believe
while.
it was
Um,
2013,
yeah,
2014. And
yeah.
so with season 7 coming out in 2020, I think it was 6 or 7 years, 6 or 7 years.
Because I remember because I think they announced season 7, not Star Wars Celebration. I don't think it was that. It was something else. Maybe it was just another one of Disney's showcasings. But we get that cool little shot of Rex, Anakin, and Hunter, and everybody goes wild, and then we get season 7. So with season 7, we get introduced for the first time to the Bad Batch. And what were your initial? Obviously, this was a while back, but did you immediately fall in love with the Bad Batch then, or did it just gradually over the course of the episodes that we got with them that you grew to love them?
Okay, fun fact, I didn't actually watch the Clone Wars like as it was airing, but I kind of jumped into it in season 7. It's kind of weird because I remember it was like COVID was right about to happen, and it was like my little did I know last day in high school. And in my robotics classroom, my teacher was like, "Hey, we're not going to do anything today," because it was kind of like speculation around like what's going to happen of school and COVID and all that stuff and lockdown. And he said, "You can pick something to watch." And it just so happened that an episode of The Clone Wars had come out that day. And it was the one where the Bad Batch go to find Echo. And so that was the very first episode of The Clone Wars I had ever seen in its entirety because I'd only seen bits and pieces here and there. And so knowing that that is the first episode I ever watched of The Clone Wars and it was about the Bad Batch feels so fitting because like later on I would fall in love completely with the Bad Batch. But I think immediately I could tell that there was something really special like in that episode because it's just so different from any clones you've ever seen. So I think for me, it was kind of like an immediate connection of like just these guys are really, really cool and I want to see more from them. And then to have the introduction of Echo coming back, where I was kind of like, okay, who's this Echo guy? But then now I know everything because then I went back and rewatched it. So it kind of like sparked my joy and like immediate connection to getting deeper into Star Wars because I'd only ever really seen the movies. So that was like really big for me to just like kind of drag me into the world of Star Wars animation.
And so for me, I had started watching The Mandalorian when it came out. And so that kind of springboarded everything for me. And so Clone Wars Season 7 was the first time I got to watch Clone Wars as it came out. And I was in college at the time, and my dorm had just been everybody had been sent home but like 7 of us, so I was by myself for quite a while, and I had recently finished Clone Wars, and so seeing Clone Wars Season 7 for the first time was really special for me because I had fallen so in love with it over the couple of months that I'd watched it, because I was inspired to watch it by The Mandalorian because I saw the dark saber and I was intrigued.
True.
And then I went did some digging and ended up watching the entirety of the Clone Wars in a couple of months. And so I will admit that I was like, oh, the Bad Batch is cool. But what I was excited for that season in particular was Ahsoka, because I had fallen in love with Ahsoka. And
Cool.
so it took me coming back to Bad Batch a little bit, and I was like, oh, these guys are cool. I like them. But I was just kind of so enthralled with everything, and I was waiting for Ahsoka. And so I remember kind of once the first season of Bad Batch came out, I was like intrigued, and I was like, oh yeah, I you know, the Clone Wars arc was good, and I kind of revisited it a little bit, and then once season 1 came out, I was hooked from there. But I'll admit my first experience with that Clone Wars season, my brain was like 100%. I was like, where is Ahsoka? Where is Ahsoka? And I was
That
just
makes
waiting. I
total
was
sense.
best life when those episodes came out with her. I was like, I was ecstatic. But I definitely was intrigued by them. And then going back now and watching those episodes, they're definitely very emotional for me with everything that's happened with Bad Batch. So yeah, it took me a little bit longer, but I definitely ended up falling in love with them for sure.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up The Mandalorian though, because I remember I wasn't sure if it came out before or after season 7, but that was like the whole reason I got Disney Plus, because I was like, this show looks kind of cool, guys, and I tried to get my family on it. I was like, we need to get into this, and then I
That's why
remember I
I
was
got
like,
Disney Plus too.
yes,
Mandalorian.
okay. The only reason I was like, I can look up Disney movies anywhere else, but then it was like The Mandalorian, and that was I was just like day one Disney Plus came out, I was like, we got to get this, and then yeah, now knowing that like it's an entire universe that connects so deeply, and then watching back everything, especially like The Mandalorian and the animated shows, I'm just like, okay, like it completely changed my experience. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, y'all listen. Y'all have been are pretty lucky because like those of us who were with the Clone Wars from the very beginning
Ooh.
we didn't have the opportunity to
Damn.
binge watch these episodes. We had to wait literally at the time. I think they kept doing it up to season 6, but like every Friday night at like 7 p.m. we had to wait for the episode to drop, and sometimes it would like you had to like record the episode because again most of these episodes were coming out during
Yep.
my high school time, and there was football games, and so but yeah, very much lucky. I was so happy. I mean, yeah, I was pretty much happy to see the Clone Wars. It's always been my favorite kind of thing, especially growing up with that kind of era of Star Wars at the time. Very much enjoyed seeing them, and then yeah, the Bad Batch, I thought they were very cool. Like just it's just the coolest parts about them was in the first episode when they come in. They're going to a droid information center. They get shot down, and Rex, being Rex, is just like, guys, we're gonna hold them here. And Hunter's like, no, we're gonna go to them. And I was like, okay, what we got here? And just watching just the synergy with Crosshairs, Hunter, Wrecker, and Tech was just so cool to watch. And then just throughout my favorite aspect of of the Bad Batch during that season 7 of the Clone Wars was the little competition between Wrecker and Crosshairs. Because Crosshair,
They had beef.
yeah, and so he does his he's such a cool sniper. I just love Crosshairs, but he does this trick where he has like these reflective discs panned out across a droid ship, and it just he shoots and it just ricochets, and Wrecker's just he's just like, what is this? And Hunter's like, relax, you'll get him next time. And just Crosshair, he's just so cheeky about it. He's like, no, you won't get me next time. I was like, oh my gosh, these guys are cool. I love these guys. And then
that was one of my favorite aspects of season 3 for sure, is getting to see a little bit of that relationship come back between Wrecker and Crosshair, and just the whole Bad Batch, but especially the two of them. That made me really happy for sure.
Yeah,
So
Sassy Man Apocalypse is so real. Seeing like Crosshair be sassy towards other people and not just the Bad Batch, but also have like the playful banter kind of be brought back. Oh, that was like healing for me.
Oh,
it really was.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Especially like after they after like after him and Omega escape and everything like that, it's just kind of like when they're on Tantus, he's like, did they teach you Plan 77? And Omega's like, yeah, Tech made me memorize all of them. And he's like, of course he did. And then later on, when they're on Teth with Rex and the other Rebel clones, I love Father Crosshairs throughout this series. I thought that was so cool. But he's just kind of like, you know, stay close. It's easy to get lost in the jungle. And Omega's just like, you're worse than you're just like Hunter. And Crosshair's like, oh no, I'm worse. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I just love this.
Yeah.
100%. Like seeing all the different sides of Crosshair, especially after everything that he's been through, I think was really lovely to kind of see his journey and also see how the Batch tries to uplift him, but especially Omega. And I think she's that like bright light to him who really centers him and kind of gave him another objective, which wasn't to be a great sniper, but to like kind of be there for her and to protect her and keep her safe, which is exactly what he did. And also, I'm sorry to like bring it back to like, you know, everything that we talked about in the beginning, but like his hand, like him losing his hand, I know there was a lot of like back and forth between a lot of people. Some people loved it. Other people's, you know, didn't really enjoy that aspect of him losing his hand especially after everything he's been through. But I loved that they decided to do that to him because it kind of separates himself from the sole identity of being a sniper. And also, I think, you know, that was his hand that had, you know, the physical embodiment of his PTSD. And so I think to lose that hand kind of separated himself from everything that he went through on Tantus and kind of severed that connection. And him still being able to make the like shot that he needed to save Omega in the end of the series finale, I think meant more that he didn't do it with his, you know, shooting hand. And I just really love that they decided to like kind of add that in, not only for his development, but also because it's just like fulfilling another Star Wars trope of just like losing a hand. And if you really think about it, like it's Star Wars, like he can get another robotic hand, like he'll be fine. But also just to have him no longer have those ties to Tantus and everything that he endured there, I thought it was a great addition to his character.
Yeah, I thought that was a really nice way to wrap up his character arc. Really, really full circle. So absolutely concur with what you said. And yeah, it's Star Wars. You can get like a cool prosthetic. Like it's very accessible. The Star Wars world is very accessible. I love that. I wish we would reflect that in real life.
Yes.
But love that for them, and very easy to replace that. So that's nice. But I definitely think that honestly, I think if he hadn't lost his hand, I don't think he would have been able to make that shot.
Yeah.
And I think, having the thing that he was connecting his PTSD to definitely doesn't make his PTSD go away, because that's not how PTSD works. I have it, I know. But I like to see that too. I will say the representation in Bad Batch, I think is some of the best that we've gotten in Star Wars. And I'm really grateful for that, as somebody who's disabled as well. And so I really appreciate seeing some of that and seeing the PTSD representation again. As somebody who has PTSD, meant a lot to me, and was a way that I was able to connect with Crosshair's character in a way that I never had. Because I'm not going to lie, until this season, I couldn't stand Crosshair. I don't even have a Funko Pop of him, but now I have to get one because now I love him. Because I had purposefully excluded him from my collection until this season, and I was like, no, now I love him. Now I need one. I hope they do season 3 ones, because I want one with his new little hand and his all the armor and everything back. That would make me really happy. But I really loved seeing that aspect of representation, because that's. You don't get a lot of representation like that, and so I think that they did a really good job of portraying it as well. And again, it doesn't make it go away, but I definitely think sometimes you have things that really connect you specifically to your trauma, and there are very specific triggers that you'll have, and so I think for him that served as a trigger that he needed to be able to be free from, and being able to be physically free from that allowed him to at least have the confidence to make the shot. And again, he was still really, anxious about that. And I think that, the mental effects of the PTSD were still there to an extent, but it was enough to give him a little bit of freedom and a little bit of peace that he was able to make that shot. And so I really appreciated that. And again, just great representation. That's the other reason I love Jennifer, is she's bringing representation into Star Wars in a new way. And I really hope we continue to see that, especially the disability representation, because it's really something that we don't see much of. And so I really hope to see that continue, because it means a lot to me personally. So yeah, that was Crosshair's redemption arc is top tier.
Top
as
tier.
well.
Yes.
For sure.
What Star Wars does pretty well, and especially what we're seeing with the Bad Batch, is how well connected with with other projects. Because I mean, season 1, really, I think it's season 1, maybe season 2, but you get characters who eventually show up in Rebels. You get a young Kanan, you get Hera, Chopper, Saw Gerrera. Well, yeah. I'm trying to think who else. I mean, obviously you have Rex, Gregor. I will. Okay. Wolf. I'm a little curious about Wolf now, about how he ends up with Rex and Gregor and Rebels, because I mean, we only see him in one episode of season 3. It was good seeing him, but now I'm just kind of like, where do you defect and basically go on Rex's side of things? So, because I don't know, that's something, but like that's them, and then I think that's pretty much all the Rebel people that are in. I think so.
Yeah,
I think
so.
And then obviously, with the whole cloning aspect in season 3, number one, it ties in with the Mandalorian, and then also ties in with the future Star Wars sequels, particularly Rise of Skywalker. So it's they do a good job of placing parts and kind of like filling in the gaps of projects that are already out there. So that was pretty good to see throughout the series. So let's start with season 1 of the Bad Batch. I'm trying to think. Why do you think Crosshair joins the Empire at first? And obviously, obviously the others don't, but what specifically about Crosshair do you think made him side with the Empire in the early seasons of the series?
I mean, for me, I think that, Crosshair's ship did play in the very beginning a part in it. Why his, was active as opposed to the rest of the batch, I think honestly is just kind of up to chance. And so, in the very beginning, that played into it a little bit, we know, but then obviously we know he removed his chip. And so, at some point that no longer played into it. But I think for Crosshair, it was kind of a fear of a lack of purpose. Because I think for all of the clones, they didn't know what was going to happen to them after the war was over. And I think that was something that was almost dreaded in a way for a lot of them. Like they wanted the war to end, but they didn't know what they were going to do because that's what they were created for. And so I think for Crosshair, he had a hard time seeing beyond, leaving the Empire because he felt that he wouldn't have a purpose. And I think that was then wrapped up really nicely with him, like you mentioned, finding a second purpose in, Omega. But I think that played into it a lot, is he just didn't see any life for himself other than that of a soldier, no matter what that meant for him and no matter what he had to do, until it got to a point where he was seeing that the Empire didn't care. And so I think, he went on that journey of discovering what purpose meant to him,
Yeah, I completely agree. I think in the beginning it was definitely due to his chip, and where he didn't have the opportunity to see a different path forward, the batch did. Like ultimately it kind of like was just between Omega, like that was their mission to get her out of Camino. And then when everything with the chip happened, I think it was definitely reflecting back on that, probably a sense of like the batch was not loyal to him because they left him behind. And so, of course, it was the chip at first, but then I think down his journey, he was kind of just like, I want to be loyal to the batch, but at the same time, be loyal to the Empire. I think loyalty's been a big kind of piece of him and how he goes about his life, and also just having a purpose. And he found both of those things with the Empire. So at the end of season 1, it was really interesting to see him kind of give the choice to the batch of just like joining the Empire and wanting to stay loyal to them and the Empire at the same time, but then seeing them have a completely different path forward with Omega and trying to adapt and change with the future in a way that they saw fit, which was different from his perspective, I think was necessary for him to kind of have that complete arc of just see everything out with the Empire as much as he could. And then when he realizes that their ties are ultimately with greed and power and not with loyalty and individuality or character, he made it his mission to kind of be once again loyal to the batch who was always there for them, and for him and the beginning, and to see him kind of come back around to them on his own journey and on his own means, I think was really lovely. But yeah, loyalty and how those ties are different between everybody, I think was really incredible. But I think it's easy for people to say like, oh, Crosshair's not loyal because he left the Bad Batch, but I think loyalty has been a big definer of his character from the very beginning, and I think he's one of the most loyal characters throughout the entire show. So yeah, I just think it was a great character arc overall.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, I like that you said that, because I don't think it's not that Crosshair didn't understand loyalty. It's that he didn't know who to be loyal to. And that is a reference to a really obscure show called Merlin on BBC. That is a quote directly from that. If you've ever watched Merlin BBC, that is a Morgana line from another villain who kind of had an opposite arc where she didn't have anyone to be loyal to. It wasn't that she wasn't loyal. And so I think Crosshair always was loyal. He just had to decide who that loyalty was going to, where his loyalty was going to lie. Mm-hmm. And ultimately he chose Fetch.
Yeah, it was very good to see, not necessarily in season 1, but pretty much in season 2, you got to see that shift of Crosshair starting to realize that the Empire is not, which, as we all know, watching, the Empire is not what they are. But obviously for Crosshairs in that sort of time frame, you believe what you're doing is right. And there's the best episodes, I think, of season 2 for me personally are the episodes that involve Crosshair as the primary character. Because I can think of, I can't remember the episode number, but the episode with him working with Cody again, and towards the end of the episode, he meets with Rampart again, and Crosshairs is like, "Where's Commander Cody?" And Rampart's like, "Who?" And he's like, he refers to Cody by his number, and it immediately gave me flashbacks of I think season 4 of Clone Wars, where Pon Krell does the same thing to Rex, and I was just kind of like, I don't listen, buddy. I don't like his name is Rex. You don't call him by his number, and I think that right there. Well, I think if I remember right, that was start of the beginning of maybe Crosshair's not ultimately changing his mind, but it slowly started to turn in his head. Then obviously, um, when he goes later on in the episode to, I can't remember the name of the planet, but he goes to the ice planet where there were clones there who, for all intents and purposes, were kind of abandoned, or they were neglected because a lot of their equipment was tattered and they just didn't have the proper necessities. And then at the end, Crosshair kills an Imperial. And I was just like, good. I'm glad you did that. I'm glad you see that the Empire is not what they are. And because it very much hits home with, even in Tales of the Jedi that came out last weekend, where with the Barris episode, where the Inquisitor kills a bunch of people, and I'm just kind of like, buddy. And even for Barris at that time too, she started to realize that the Empire is probably not what they are. But I'm glad to see Crosshair. It was good. It was really, really good to see him get that realization that the Empire is not what they are. They're willing to discard you as soon as they're done with you. Like, you're nothing to them, but it's just something for them to use, and when you're done, they just replace you with somebody else. So it was good to see that.
Yeah, I agree for sure.
And then let's see. Well, what else? It was good to see. It was really cool to see in season 1, where watching the Batch trying to find their purpose in the galaxy. It's basically being mercenaries for the most part. Sid is trash, plain and simple. So, which, I mean, obviously, I shouldn't be surprised about that particular character, but part of me thinks she actually cared about them, but she was your generic. I'm more about the money than anything else.
Yeah. I think definitely like her want of like greed and safety trumped any little bit of care that she had for the Bad Batch. But I do love how the showmakers and the showrunners of the Bad Batch allow certain characters to be inherently bad and be greedy, because I think it's nice to have the thought of like everybody has the opportunity to change, but others just don't choose to do that. So with the conclusion of Sid's story and having her betray the Empire, or betray the Bad Batch again, turning over information to the Empire in season 3 was kind of just like, okay, she really is the same person that we thought her to be. And then also with Rampart, who you kind of think like, okay, maybe he'll have a mini character arc because you get to see similar backgrounds in Callus and Rebels and how he has this whole change. But ultimately, Rampart just chose to be the nasty, sleazy person that he is. And I kind of love that some characters are just bad. Similar with Hemlock, like there is no opportunity of change for these people because they've chosen their path, they've chosen what they want to do. And to see Rampart go out in a way that he did, I loved it. It was incredible. So great. So much satisfaction on the part of also his character going out, not at his own hands, but kind of because of like his actions. He could have easily made it out there if he hadn't chose to try to get dirt on Hemlock. And then with Nala Se also having her character be so devoted to Omega and knowing that the only way she can truly protect Omega is by taking herself out and her data, I thought was amazing and delayed Project Necromancer for years to come. So just, I think the Batch and everybody who had a part in taking everything out of Tantus truly made much more of an impact than they ever thought possible, which was great to see.
I agree. I really liked to see how Nalse's character arc ended with her sacrifice, because I think they led with that in season 1 with her being the reason that they were able to escape, and so it was nice to see that come full circle, because she was always kind of working behind the shadows, to want to help Omega, but she never wanted to put herself directly in harm's way. And then finally she just said, you know what, I'm not going to make it out, and so I might as well make sure Omega is going to be okay. And I loved to see that she really cared about her, and was cared about her enough to be willing to sacrifice herself. And so that was really nice to see. And it was also really nice to see Rampart go with her. Boy, did that feel good. It made me so happy. And yeah, I like what you said about Hemlock too. That was a very satisfying. I'm a little disappointed he didn't get chomped by the Zillobeast, because I'm not gonna lie, I kind of had my heart set on just like the Zillobeast just like coming up over the bridge and just out like Lord Farquaad, like the dragon.
For real.
That's what I wanted. I literally made a meme, but I'm still very happy he got taken out. But I really would have loved to see him get chomped, because that would have been really satisfying. But he fell, which pride goes before a fall, literally. So that was great to see. And also kind of almost a mirroring of Tech in a way, which is good, because it's like Tech chose to fall. He chose to sacrifice himself. Hemlock didn't want to sacrifice, and wanted to, he's a horrible person.
Opposites. So. Yeah.
Totally glad that.
And also,
that was great.
I love I loved the way he went out. The overkill too was really nice, I thought, because you get to see like season 1, they're only using stun. I think the entire season, unless it's on droids, they're using the stun setting on their blasters to cut to the series finale, and they're not letting back at all. So you get to see multiple shots be taken on several different characters, and I kind of loved that finally they got to just like have that out. So the overkill and Hemlock especially was just like the cherry on top. I was like, yes, like thank goodness.
I'm sure that was a very healing moment for Crosshair. I think I don't know if he would admit it, but I think he probably was very happy with that. And yeah, I was happy to see that he made sure. Crosshair was like, I'm not going around with this. We're gonna make sure he's dead.
And I think Hunter even got a couple shots in.
Yes, he did. I was like, yes, boys, take him out.
Oh, so good.
It was so good. It was so good.
Yeah, it was very just, again, it's just very cool in that season, in that finale, where the trust was there between all three. Like Omega knew she could trust Crosshairs to make the shot, and Hunter's like, you can do this. And even though Crosshairs had that doubt, because he was worried, because obviously if he's off, he could hit Omega, and him having that confidence, knowing that both Hunter and Omega trust him to make the shot, and he makes the shot, and it's just beautiful. I was just like, oh man, this is so good to watch.
It was nice to see between Hunter and Crosshair too, because we know that Omega trusted Crosshair at that point, and we knew that Hunter did too, but especially after their confrontation, like it was really nice to see that in that climax moment, Hunter had full trust in him. And I think that's what Crosshair needed, because he knew Omega trusted him. I think he needed to know that Hunter trusted him and that Hunter had faith in him. And that was a really nice moment between the two of them. And so that whole scene was one of my, other than the actual ending scene, that was my favorite part of the finale for sure.
Yeah.
It was very funny too to watch. Just because of Omega and Crosshair spending so much time together at Mount Tanthus when they finally escape, she's kind of like trying to mimic Crosshairs in some aspect, because he'll be sitting back with like a toothpick in his mouth, and I remember Hunter glancing over and Omega's basically doing the same thing, and so I was like, oh, that's
yeah. And especially in like the prison break episode where she's like trying to plot out the kids in the vault, like their escape, you get to see different aspects of the Bad Batch in her, where it's like Hunter's leadership, like Wrecker's caring, like Echo's like stoicness, and then just like Crosshair's like observancy, and Tech's like strategicness. It was just, oh my gosh, you got to see like the Batch completely be represented in her, and see how much her training has gone and like how much she's learned. So great.
I love how Echo immediately knew too that it was her who let out the Zillobeast, and everybody's like, "How do you know?" That's what I would do. He's like, "She's my girl. She takes after me."
Like mother, like daughter.
Yep. And then Hunter and Wrecker Crosser were like, "Was it Echo or Omega?" It was Omega.
Omega.
They know her very, very well, and that was really funny.
It's just, I loved that. That was just it. Just the timing of all that. was just great. Just Hunter and the Wrecker, just like Omega. So, because obviously, like even you were kind of like, yeah, this is definitely Omega's handiwork for sure. Um, yeah, she has really grown up, and I think I would probably put her in this category as the same as Ahsoka, where you get these kind of characters off the bat. Not many people like these characters, but over the course of the series or whatever projects they're in, people ultimately fall in love with these characters. Because I mean, I vividly remember Ahsoka getting not being loved by a lot of people because they were like, Anakin Skywalker shouldn't have, doesn't have an apprentice or something along those lines. But then now she is a fan favorite. Both men and women love Ahsoka, and I think Omega probably a lot faster than Ahsoka is starting to get a little bit more love from the overall fan base. Um, I think a lot of people just found her character maybe annoying in season one, but again, as I said, as the series went on, I think people really started to enjoy her character. You can even like I love going on TikTok after like after like a Bad Batch episode and just watching everybody's reactions to different parts of the episodes. And there were a lot of people very much happy to see Omega join the rebellion, and a much more older version of Omega as well. And so it was good. I'm glad. It's a lot. The processing of disliking a character at first to loving that character is kind of speeding up a little bit faster. And so depending on what future projects and future characters come out, hopefully just right off the bat, people will and enjoy them. Because to say the least, the Acolyte is along this line as well when it comes to what's being presented in the series. But usually, like I just tell people, just watch it first and then you can give your opinion on whether you like these characters or not.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit I loved Ahsoka from the moment that I watched it, and I've loved Omega from season 1 too. I'll admit,
Yeah.
I think a little bit of that has to do with the fact that a lot of people get irked by, younger female characters. And there's a little bit of, I could say, probably some sexism
Yeah.
in there for sure. And so I'm glad that maybe we're seeing our fandom hopefully turn a new leaf in dealing with some of that, because I think it's unfortunate that people didn't like Omega's character at first, and that it's only now that people are coming around to her. People also just seem to be easily irritated by child characters, which, not gonna lie, that's a little weird. Why do children irritate you? Like if they're misbehaving and they're like, I get it. Sometimes kids can be a little bit annoying, but sometimes people don't like child characters, and it's just a little weird. Not gonna lie, but I am glad we've seen a quicker turnaround for Omega's character, and I hope maybe in the future our fandom, is growing, and we're not gonna deal with that as much in the future, because I think it's unfortunate that these characters kind of started out that way, with dealing with that hatred. I know Ashley Eckstein has talked a lot about that and how difficult that was for her. And so I'm glad that Michelle Ang didn't have to deal with nearly as much. It would seem, as Ashley did, that there's been a little growth there. And so hopefully we continue to see that in the future, that people are, a little more accepting of characters like that. Because, I mean, for me, I loved her since the moment she stepped on screen. And I think Omega's character has just been phenomenally done from the beginning. So.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. It definitely has to, I think it boils down to them being women, also enhanced by the fact that they're children. And it's really odd that people fault them for doing normal child things, for making mistakes and then learning from them, which I think are lessons that everybody needs to learn. So I hope that people are now getting it, the fact that like it pays off if you just wait a little bit. So fortunately, I loved Omega and Ahsoka from the very beginning. And I think the fact that they make so many mistakes and that they are growing and learning, I like resonated with them a lot more, just because I'm like, those are things that I'm doing in my life where I'm still young or younger when I started watching these shows. And I make mistakes and that's a human thing. It's normal. And yeah, I think thankfully there's a lot more of an outpouring of love than there is hate for these characters. So I feel like the love that people are giving and just putting out there hopefully trumps over anything that, people would hate on them for. It's crazy to me that it's still happening. But of course, that's to be expected. But yeah, people, please just give them a chance. Like, let them breathe first.
Right?
It's crazy.
Yeah. It's always the child characters. I mean, Jake Lloyd, Anakin Skywalker, and
Oh
even
gosh.
Vivian as young Leia. Like every single time there is a child character, I think again people just get really irritated by children. It's like that's because they're children. Children can be kind of annoying because they're childish and they make mistakes, and that's okay. And so I feel like a lot of people get irritated by that. But yeah, like you said, they're kids. They're just being kids, and so here's hoping that things continue to improve, and that we can have more positivity just in general in this fandom, because I think we need it for sure.
All right. So as we get ready to wrap up this Bad Batch series review, so here in a couple of weeks we have the Acolyte dropping June 4th. Yeah. Is that a Wednesday or a Tuesday? I'm not entirely sure. They
I
keep
don't know.
Star
I think
Wars.
But I know it's a 2 episode premiere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems
I
like
didn't see
they're.
the last night, so that was really cool. I'm
Yeah.
excited for it.
It seems like their live action shows drop on Tuesdays, and then the animation ones come out on Wednesdays, which is interesting. Well, other than
Mhm.
Tales of the Empire, which makes sense for it to come out on May 4th. So we got the Acolyte coming out in a couple of weeks, but I believe also Skeleton Crew comes out this December.
That's
Obviously,
what I heard.
Really? I had not
That's
heard.
kind of,
Yeah.
it's like word on the street. Like I don't know if it's not confirmed anywhere, but it's like
Yeah.
word on the street. Word
Yeah.
going around is that they're like
I
aiming
hope
for
that's
December.
true. I've been waiting for that for a while.
And there's like no trailers, nothing. So I'm just like, okay,
Nothing.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
But that one also I know has a lot of kids. So I'm like, I'm nervous. I'm locking in. I'm getting ready to protect these children. I'm like, okay, let's go.
We're gearing up. We're ready to. I'm gonna catch some hands. People say things
For
about these.
real.
No, I'm excited for Skeleton Crew. I hope we actually get that confirmed, because it's been a while. We've been waiting for this.
I know.
What are your thoughts? So we have basically two trailers for the Acolyte. I would say with the second one that recently came out, probably has me a little bit more intrigued than what the first one did. But what are you looking forward to this series? Obviously, it's set. We're basically finally moving away from the Skywalker era of Star Wars and going in a different direction. So, what are you excited for this show, or you're kind of like in a wait and see approach when it comes to something like this?
I'm definitely excited for it. I'll admit, it being live action and it being the TV-14 rating, I am not one for a lot of gore in particular, and I know that this show has been advertised more as a thriller, so I'm excited for the concept, waiting to see if it's something that I'm going to be able to watch without doing this the whole time. Just because, like, I'm very squeamish. But in general, in concept, I'm very excited and hoping that I'll be able to watch it. I might have to have someone screen it for me first and tell me what moments I might need to look away from. Because watching the trailer, the second trailer, I was like, yeah, there might be a few moments where I might have to look away for a second, because it looks like this is going to be definitely, probably, I would say, the most mature content we've seen for Star Wars. And I think the action is definitely going to be amped up in that direction. But that's cool. And I know that that's something that's exciting for a lot of people. I haven't read any of the High Republic books. And so I don't know too much about that era. I'm learning a little bit about it just because I'm intrigued, but I definitely think, like you said, that second trailer did really get me intrigued. So I'm very excited. I think this is a new door opening for Star Wars, and I just love getting to see so many Jedi. That is something that we don't get to see much of, other than really like the early Clone Wars era, but just like seeing so many Jedi all together is really cool. And so I'm definitely excited for it. I'm definitely excited.
Yeah, I'm really excited. On the contrary, I'm a little bit eager to lean more into like maybe a little bit of gore and maybe a little bit of the darker parts of Star Wars, which I know, I mean, I doubt they're gonna go too far, I think, especially because I feel like there will be kids watching. But I think the Tales of the Empire was probably a great way to kind of lean into some of the darker aspects and getting to have that perspective of like why people turn on the Jedi originally and how that kind of furthers in the Phantom Menace and then ultimately in the Skywalker saga. But I'm really excited to kind of step away from existing characters that most of us who haven't read the High Republic novels like don't really know about, and coming from somebody who has like a really fresh perspective because I haven't read any of the High Republic novels. I'm really excited to go into it and just kind of like learn about this time period and learn about these characters and also see the original traditions of the Jedi, because we know when we are introduced to them in the Clone Wars, they're ultimately having to adapt to war. So to see them in that kind of before they're deteriorated by having to become strategists and all of that, it'll be really interesting to maybe see them have inklings of being those peacekeepers that they set out to be and how that changes later on. So I'm really excited to just kind of dive into this, and it's really different to kind of step back from an animated series and the Bad Batch and kind of step into live action and it being so different. It's interesting because like I'm so used to like knowing everything about the Bad Batch and having so much insight on these characters. So to have something where I'm kind of just like a fresh newbie about, it's kind of a cool experience for me.
Yeah, that is very much a very interesting show to watch. I'm very much looking forward to see on how it definitely goes about with storytelling, and because obviously it's set at a point where technically I'm pretty sure technically it's Yoda would technically be around during this time, so I don't think
Yeah.
we'll see Yoda, but he's age wise, because I think in Return of the Jedi he's 900 years old at that point,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
he potentially could be close to around that time, or at least up and coming. But yeah, I'm
Yeah.
very excited to just see a different.
The acolyte only takes place like 100 to 200 years before Phantom Menace, somewhere in
Yeah,
that range. So Yoda would definitely be alive, like you mentioned. I don't think we'll see him, but he'd definitely be alive. So I don't know,
Maybe in the
maybe we'll
background.
get a little glimpse. Yeah, like in the background. So many Jedi at that point, and so it makes sense that we won't see him because he may not even have been on the council at that point.
Mhm.
Actually, I'm almost 100% sure he wasn't on the council at that point. But it might be interesting just to like literally see him walk down the hallway and just be like, "There's Yoda."
because there's
There he is.
also Plo Koon, age wise with his
Yes,
species.
please.
I
I
He
think he might
might
be.
Yeah,
be. I think he might be.
there's
He
an
probably would
image
have been
out
quite
there
young then.
that you can
I'm
kind of
craving
make it
more Plo
out.
Koon.
Yeah.
Same.
um because I'm not sure what his species, what their age is like.
300, somewhere around there. I think Plo Koon might have been around 200 in Clone Wars. I don't recall exactly, but
Yeah.
that's my educated guess. Is I think around 200 or 300.
Yeah. I wonder if you can look that up. I wonder if that's on like Wikipedia or
Plo
something
Koon.
like that.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's interesting though that you mentioned this time frame because so many people keep talking about how Plagueis should be in it, and that is not true because Plagueis does not canonically have an age, and we never canonically see him. All we have about Plagueis is the fact that he was Palpatine's master, and so people keep saying, "Oh, well, are they decanonizing Plagueis?" No, they are not. Plagueis would not have been alive, most likely, and if he was, he would have been very, very, very young. And so people keep being like, why isn't Plagueis the Sith? Because he's not alive yet. Because we do not have a exact year time frame that this show is being set in. So we kind of have this guesstimate range of like 100 to 200 years before the Phantom Menace. And so Plagueis most likely was not alive. So people keep saying that, but it's like, nope, he doesn't have a canonical age. He canonically exists, but he doesn't have. I think in the extended universe, Plagueis lived to be a little older than the average human. I think he would have. I think his age was like 113 or something like that when he died, but that's only in Legends, and so we don't have that canonically. I would love to see Plagueis not in this, but at some point, because Sith lore fascinates me. But he would not have been alive during this, so.
Yeah, that wasn't even a thought that crossed my mind.
Yeah.
So it looks like at the time of him dying in Revenge of the Sith, Plo Koon was 385 years old.
Okay, I was off by 85 years, but hey, not. I was
he would definitely probably be around during this time as well. I wonder who else. What about?
He probably also wouldn't have been on the council,
right?
For sure. But because I think we know who's on the Jedi Council from the books. I don't know who they are, but I know that I'm pretty sure the council's pretty established. It's much bigger. They
downsized?
I think they downsized later because it would appear the council is a little larger, although I don't know. I might be wrong. Again, I'm not the authority on this. I haven't read any of the books. I am making educated guesses from the TikTok videos I have watched, because we have a lot of friends that are High Republic. For sure.
I'm literally looking to them for guidance. I'm like, help.
Yeah.
I'm lost.
Shout out to Brittany, who is like our High Republic, one of our mutuals. I think you're mutual with Brittany. Do you know who I'm talking about? Magically Blonde. So. Yes, she's like the expert on High Republic, and a few other people as well. So I'm kind of looking to her to be like, I don't know what's happening. Please tell me. So I've watched a lot of her videos, to say the least.
I would definitely say if you can get your hands on it, it's not tied in with the Acolyte, but a very fun game is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. Very, very fun.
Heard of it.
I have played. I've started KOTOR a little bit, and KOTOR takes place like 1,000 years before Phantom Menace, or it's like 3,000 years. I don't know. It's like way back. Yeah. But I'm still hoping for that KOTOR remake they keep promising that we haven't heard anything about. But I'm holding out hope.
There's that.
Maybe.
There's that, and there's also Star Wars: The Old Republic, which is kind of like a live service online game community that you can do. So with that game, you can be a Jedi, you can be a smuggler, you can be a bounty hunter, you can be a Sith, and so you can it's different stories. If you've ever, I would say go watch the if you look up Star Wars: The Old Republic movie trailers or cinematic trailers that they have, you'll immediately want to jump into that game because they are really, really good.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I've seen some of the trailers and stuff like that. I definitely like to play it at some point, because the Old Republic era is the era I think that fascinates me the most, other than like the Skywalker era and the Imperial era and prequels and everything. I am absolutely fascinated by the Old Republic and the Sith Brotherhood and all that, and so I would really love to see some of that brought to screen. I'm gonna hold out hope for a Darth Bane trilogy or series or literally anything until forever. So here's hoping someday, because Darth Bane's really cool. He needs his own show. He does. He's awesome.
Yep.
And I would love Mark Hamill to voice him.
Oh
Great.
Yeah. That's true. But all right, guys, that is where we will end this week's video. Hope you guys enjoyed this nearly 2-hour long conversation of Star Wars: The Bad Batch. And once again, I very much enjoyed having these two lovely ladies on. I'll have their information in the description so you can follow them on TikTok, Instagram, and other social media. And I will probably on screen now, you'll see it. I also have it up on there too as well. but this will also be on podcast form. So for those who are listening, and how can they follow and support you too? Whoever wants to.
I'm the same on all platforms. Yeah, I know we're both like, you go first. It's the same on all platforms. Katari X Cruise. It's like Katari and then XCRUZ. Yeah.
My username is pretty similar on all platforms. I think there is like an the not a hyphen, but the like little underscore slash thing is in a different place, but it's Nerdy Girl 501. So if you look that up, I'm usually the first one to pop up. So I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and starting a YouTube channel hopefully in the next couple of weeks, where I'll be posting a little bit longer like character dives and stuff like that. I have a series that I release on Fridays called Faith and Fandom Fridays, where I talk about how Star Wars and fandom relates to my faith in Jesus. And I make, we'll hopefully be releasing some devotionals as well through another podcast series, some faith and fandom devotionals that you'll be able to listen to. So I have a couple of different things that you'll be able to check out pretty soon.
And as per usual, guys, here on the channel, we're a little slow this week. As we're getting ready, we just finished up with our Marvel Ultimate Alliance playthrough, gearing up for our first playthrough of Halo 4. There's also a video, I believe I have it coming out this weekend. I may move it back depending on how things go, but we are going to be taking a look back at the 1979 film Alien, with Alien Romulus coming out later on this year. I wanted to dive into that, talk about the first movie of that franchise. So that's going to be out on the channel as well, probably this weekend, but if not, probably Monday at the earliest. But as per usual, you guys, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for stopping by and listening. Be sure to go give a follow. You're going to enjoy their content. You'll see them laugh, you'll see them cry. Probably cry more than anything. So
Mostly crying.
There's a lot of ugly stuff.
So you'll definitely enjoy their content, and we'll definitely have them back on at some point in the future, discuss more Star Wars content overall. But thank you guys for just hanging out this Wednesday, and other than that, we will see y'all in the next video. See ya.